Well, welcome to our 8th module of the Series 65-66 class presented by Series 7 Specialists. We're glad to have you back. I'm Dan Mars, your instructor. And we'll pick back up where we left off on page 11 of the outline with books and records that must be maintained and rules according to the Investment Company Act of 1940, where we are. So in any event, for investment advisors, the books and records must be maintained for 5 years, with most 2 recent years being readily accessible there in the office. There's a 6-year federal requirement for broker-dealers. Sometimes that shows up a little bit on the test, that these 5 years for investment advisors, 6 years for broker-dealers. So even though it is an investment advisor representative test, sometimes you'll see that on the broker-dealer. I would make note of that. That there is that difference. That would include all their financial records, all the client account records, and transaction records of associated persons. Now, associated persons, keep in mind that an investment advisor has a fiduciary responsibility, and as such, if I were the investment advisor and in my own account what I was doing was contrary to what I was telling my clients, well, now, why would it be good for me to do A, but good for my clients to do the exact opposite? Something's wrong here, okay? And so there's some kind of something that's going on. Or am I basically saying, XYZ be a great stock, and so my own personal records show that I buy XYZ here today, and then over the course of the next 6 months I position all my clients in XYZ. Wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm front running, is what they call that, putting myself in a position to profit from what I do with my customers' assets. That's a violation of my fiduciary responsibility. And so all of this, the records of associated persons, just to make sure that there are no misdealings, that we do keep our clients' interests first, that we do uphold our fiduciary responsibility. That's why it's important for all those associated person records to be maintained. And then also compensation records, including soft dollar compensation. Now, soft dollars are basically just barter bucks, is all it is. That's the easiest way to put it. We've decided that we're going to trade out this service, for our services, and or for something else of value. And so we may get research services, something like that. Now, the soft dollars have shown up on the test for years and years, but just recently they've really tightened up the requirements on soft dollar transactions. And so one of the things to keep in mind is what we said, I believe this is the last module: if in doubt, disclose. If you're an investment advisor, disclose, including disclosing soft dollar compensation. Even if it's something that's going to be the best for your clients because it's going to reduce your overall expenses, that's fine. It doesn't matter. Disclose it. Your clients have really a right to know what side of the bread the butter's on. And so disclose to them what kind of compensation you get from whom, and include that soft dollar compensation in it. So now there's certain types of soft dollar compensation that have a safe harbor. They're allowable. It's a legitimate exchange of services for these, and these would include. Well, look at the list. Those are all going to be legitimate business expenses that we can, instead of paying, we can receive the services, and instead of they pay with those services. So stock quote services, software, seminars, research reports, things that are related to the core of both businesses, those things are allowable. But look at the things that are not allowable, all right? Paying our rent, buying us furniture or providing furniture for us, equipment or services not related to either business, travel to seminars. They're going to pay for the seminar or conduct the seminar, allow us to attend for free. We can get there on our own. And basically what it is I don't know if you've seen the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's, classic movie. If you have, you'll know what I'm talking about when I talk about not the main character, but Steve. Steve is an aspiring author, and Steve, he's got a typewriter. Remember, it's an old movie, and he's got a typewriter that it's in the typewriter case in the closet that's buried underneath tons of stuff in his closet, and he's never pulled it out. And the reason he's never had to pull it out was that he has a sponsor, shall we say, someone who is his benefactor, shall we say, that provides him soft dollars for his rent because he provides her with something else, and it causes a big stew when he decides that he's actually going to start writing. So anyway, he's basically a kept man. If you're a kept advisor, no, don't do that. Pay your own rent, for crying out loud. Buy your own furniture. If you can't afford to buy it, lease it, okay? There's thousands of places will do that for you. But those are not legitimate soft dollar exchanges. Something that's like I say, that would be related to both businesses, sure, maybe so. But if it's not related to the businesses, then it's not going to be allowable soft dollar compensation. Another thing that should be maintained is copies of ads that are sent to 10 or more persons that are that there's no filing requirement for these, because basically there's no place to file them. Okay? So what we need to do is we need to look and see what is what and get some definitions here, because the thing is, if I as an advisor send out something to one person, then that's a letter. If I send something out to 2 people, then I'm corresponding with group correspondence, what have you. But if I send it out to 10 or more people, then what I'm doing is I'm advertising. And those advertisements have to be filed internally in the office. Because, I mean, think about your broker-dealer, okay? Your broker-dealer has to file with FINRA, okay, the old NASD, National Association of Security Dealers, and before they merged with New York Stock Exchange compliance, that's where those would be filed. You don't have a National Association of Investment Advisors. There is an NAIA, but that's the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. We go to send them some advertising and say, what the heck do we do with this? We don't even know what these guys are doing. We play basketball, for crying out loud. So there's no place to file it. No one to file it with. You just have to keep it on record in your own internal files, because again, there's no place to send it. The investment advisor's brochure. We need to look at the brochure because this is going to be the source of a lot of questions. The brochure is comprised of Part 2 of Form ADV. Now, this is one of the reasons why I want you to look over Part ADV, and especially Part 2. All right, so that you're familiar with the types of things that are on there, the types of disclosures, the types of requirements for building up the brochure, and again, don't memorize it. You won't have to recreate the form. Don't study it, because it's overkill on minutia. Rather, just kind of scan over it so that when there's a question that comes up, say, oh, hey, I remember having seen that as one of the things that's, it's on Form ADV, it's in Part 2, and just familiarity with what those requirements are. So Part 2 of Form ADV, and then you also have Part 2A, Appendix 1 of Form ADV, which describes wrap fee programs and the parameters that you have for the wrap accounts. Remember, those wrap accounts, those are the asset-based fees where the transaction expenses become secondary. What we're doing is we're charging an annual fee wrapped around this pool of assets that the customer brings to us. As a broker-dealer, that takes us out from underneath our exclusion, and we become investment advisors. All right, so there's that, and then Part 2B of Form ADV, which is a brochure supplement talking about and listing supervised persons. And just again, just kind of looking over the form will help you to remember some of those things, because it tells what you have to do, how you have to do it, It must be, the requirements are right down below. It has to be in narrative form. That's one of the bullet point requirements. That it's not a, used to, what would happen is that the federal government, Part 2, was actually just kind of a fill-in-the-blanks form. And a lot of advisors would, they would be able to meet the minimum standards of the law by providing this fill-in-the-blanks form. And they say, this is our brochure, it's a legal requirement, we give it to you. What is all this stuff? What does this mean? You know, this doesn't mean anything to me, because there are a lot of folks that just can't get into that. So now you have, what you have to do, you have to make it in a narrative. Here's what we do, here's how we do it, this is our philosophy, this is how we charge money, why we charge what we do. And so it's a narrative form, has to be written in plain English. You know, we can get into just so many multisyllabic words of second derivatives of whatever, you know, statistical terms, quantitative analysis. No. Keep it simple. We look for uptrends. We confirm these in several different ways. You know, something like that just a regular person can understand. We need to avoid jargon, technical, legal terms, what have you. Keep it just really, really simple. Straight, sweet, to the point. Discloses the obligation as a fiduciary. What is a fiduciary? Tell your customer. What do you have to do as a fiduciary? Tell your customer. They know what to look for and what to say that, wait a minute, this is all wrong. He's not putting my interests first. Disclose, disclose, disclose. Full and truthful disclosures. Are we surprised by that at all? No. And it's filed with the IARD, which is kind of like the CRD for broker-dealer agents, if it's a state advisor, or made available to the SEC for federal covered advisors. So again, the IARD is the equivalent on the investment advisor side of CRD for registered representatives. The brochure rule under the Uniform Securities Act, over on page 12, it has to be delivered 48 hours prior to signing a contract. All right, now, if it's not, the minimum requirement for delivery is concurrent with the signing of the contract. So if you hit that minimum requirement, then you have to give your customer a 5-day right of rescission to cancel that contract with no penalty whatsoever. All right? And in fact, I would go so far as to assume state law applies if there's nothing specified, because the federal law does not address this at all. So if you're talking about that type of cancellation of the contract without penalty, they're talking about the Uniform Securities Act. What you've got is that that you've been talking to a potential customer. Maybe it's a referral. Okay. And so you set up an appointment and you say, Bob, I tell you what, here we go, here we are today, you're having this conversation. You say, Bob, I tell you what I'm going to do, I'm going to mail you a brochure, and let's get together then next Friday. So you mail it here, okay, and he receives it there, and here's at least 48 hours. You then meet with him, and during that meeting, he signs. Because of the fact that you have this 48-hour time frame right here, then you don't have to, if later on down the road, right out here, he says, you know, I've had buyer's remorse, I don't want to do this, I've reconsidered, and he cancels the contract, all right, then you can actually charge him the setup fees, the prorated fees that he would have incurred, what have you, because he had that for 48 hours, the brochure, 48 hours prior to signing. But let's take scenario 2. That's where you give Bob a call and say, Bob, I'm glad that Fred recommended you. Let's set up a meeting. So let's set it up a week from Friday. I want to mail you something in the meantime. He says, you know, a week from Friday, I'm just going to be jammed. He says, do you have a couple of hours today? So he said, well, sure. So you get together and you tell him what the deal is and how you do your business. He says, well, no, Fred, he really speaks highly of you. He says, I think I want to do it. So where's a contract? You said, well, here. I mean, you know, in fact, let me just can I print one? I download it right now. Sure, fine. And so you give him the brochure right here. And you give him the contract and he signs. No 48 hours there. It all happened on the same day. And so now, here's, let's see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days out. And somewhere along through, let's say right here, is when he decides that he's going to cancel. Okay? Now, what you can do is you can charge him for 3 days of advisory services. Whatever the fee would be prorated for those 3 days, because that's service that you actually delivered to him. But setup fees, anything like that, any other fees, you're not able to do that because he's got 5 days here that he can cancel without penalty. Now if he cancels over here, that's 6 days in. Well, now he's in the same boat as this guy was in, who got the brochure 48 hours ahead of time. And so, like I say, that's that 48-hour rule, state law. But if you see something along that lines, that's what it's referring to. All right, so that's the brochure delivery rule, Uniform Securities Act. With regard to the federal, if it's a federal covered advisor, then the brochure has to be delivered at or prior to entering a contract. And written or oral contracts doesn't matter. You've still got to deliver that brochure. Now you'll note that under state law and state law only, that oral contracts are going to be a violation of the Uniform Securities Act. Under federal law, you can have with just folks, you can have an oral contract. Remember that if it's with an investment company, it has to be in writing. But with just folks, you can have an oral contract. And updated and delivered within 120 days of the fiscal year end at no charge. You never pay for a brochure if you're a customer. It's always made available to you or delivered to you. So updated within 120 days of the end of the fiscal year. Exemptions to the brochure rule. Look at that first one, okay? The investment companies. And remember when we talked about those contracts, we said the contract's that thick and it goes through every single little bitty detail. What good would it do to give a 2-page, 3-page brochure? I mean, you got folks who know what they're getting into and they have everything specified in their contract. It's kind of superfluous in the case of an investment company. Also, officers, directors of the investment advisors who are individual clients, they know how they do business, for crying out loud. Worse than that, they prepare the brochure. So you're not telling them anything that they don't know. And in a situation where the advice that we give is impersonal and the fee is less than $200 if it's a state, this is both state and federal requirement. At the federal government, it's $500 per year. So again, just one of those little differences. But if that's what we charge for it, this would be a little market newsletter. Okay, may or may not actually give specific suggestions. If we do, it is just that. It's a suggestion. It's not that like investment counsel where we're dealing with an individual client's assets. It's kind of take it or leave it stuff. So anyway, less than 200 or 500 respectively at the state or federal level, like a or newsletter subscription. And if the impersonal advice is greater than the minimum cost, then we have to make that available on request. So once a year in our newsletter, down in the corner, we'll have a little ad that says, look, our new brochure is available. Give us a call at 1-800-BUY-STOCKS and we'll gladly send it to you. And but that's what we have to do. All right, so let's go ahead then and look real quick at custody rules for advisors. Okay. Custody, first of all, we start out by saying that custody and discretion are not the same thing. And just to give you a little reminder here. We'll start out with a misspelling. We'll intentionally misspell the word custody. Because what custody means is that we're going to keep stuff in our possession. On the other hand, discretion means that we will decide. Alright? Now, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that custody is just perfectly normal for broker-dealers. It's rather unusual for investment advisors. So there are special rules for investment advisors when they want to actually maintain custody of customer assets. On the other hand, discretion is a little bit more common, quite a bit more common at investment advisors than it is for broker-dealers. So you've got more stringent rules with broker-dealers. It's in the normal flow of things with your investment advisors, just like custody is in the normal flow for broker-dealers. But like I say, remember there is that difference between custody and discretion. Custody, we actually keep physical possession of those securities and money. So certain fee prepayment arrangements, they're not custody, but they might as well be. And so look at them, okay? Basically, if we can take the cup and put it into the customer's assets and just pull out a big old cup of money without telling the customer anything, we might as well have control of it. We might as well have it in our possession because we've got adequate control that we can pull it out for ourselves, for our own benefit. So that would be deemed to be custody. If we charge more than $1,200 under federal law, $500 under state law in fees, and that covers 6 months or more of services, and we have discretion over the customer assets. Put those three together, and what have you got? Okay, you've got the advisor getting a significant chunk of money in advance, and I call the shots anyway if I'm the advisor. Do you see a potential there for abuse? Yeah, and so that might as well be custody. An automatic debit of fee is considered custody unless before, during, and after the fact the customer advised, hey, we're going to take the money out. The broker-dealer that has the custody, the actual physical securities and money, they're just going to send us a check directly. You don't have to worry about pulling out the old credit card or writing a check. Before prior written authorization is given. It's about that time. Simultaneous billings are provided. It's that time, we're getting ready to do it right now. And then finally, the advisor gives notices to the customer. This is what we did. So before, during, and after the fact, on that automatic debit of fees. The advisor, if they have custody, then they have to provide quarterly reports to the customer. Think about it for a second, okay? If my stuff and my money is at a broker-dealer firm, the broker-dealer firm is going to send me at least quarterly statements, monthly if there's activity. But now, because the investment advisor actually has physical custody, there's no broker-dealer involved. Somebody's got to send me a statement. It's got to be the investment advisor, at least quarterly. I'm hoping that I want him to do it monthly, but that's beside the point. It's at least quarterly for custody only. And then on both custody and those prepayment situations, the advisor must disclose adverse financial conditions. At the broker-dealer, there's SIPC. There's no such thing on the investment advisor side. And so it's incumbent upon the investment advisor to give notification if there are some adverse financial situations going on at that investment advisor, because it puts the customer's money at risk if the investment advisor has the stuff and goes under. So disclose, disclose, disclose. Then the investment advisor must provide audited financial statements, including a balance sheet, remember, annually on Schedule G. Again, both of these situations, whether custody or prepayment, and it must be subject to a surprise audit annually, and then Form ADV-E is the cover for that auditor's examination report. All right, so that is completed by the IA and then submitted with the examination report. So that surprise audit, okay, is required annually by a certified public accountant. And reports and disclosures are only sent to the customers for whom the advisor has custody. This is one place where you need to read your question carefully, because if it says all, that may or may not be correct. So Mary is an investment advisor. She runs an investment advisory firm. For some customers, she has custody. For others, she does not. And must she send, or she needs to send, audited financial statements annually to all of her customers? No, no. All means everybody, and they don't all fit in there. So read your questions carefully and be very sure to watch out for those all, every, none, only, words like that that are either include everything or exclude everything. Be very leery about those, okay? Because that's exactly what they mean, is all or none. And so just, like I said, watch them, read them carefully, and remember that this is not for all. It's only for the customers for whom the advisor has custody. So we've about hit a breaking point. We'll come back then and talk about investment advisor disclosures, specifically what has to be disclosed. We've kind of talked in general terms, and if in doubt, disclose. So we'll see you back in a few minutes for Module 9. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to be of service.